What up, y'all? It's episode 2 of Buckets Don't Stop, presented by Jackpot City Casino. I'm your host, Ekam Nagra. Subscribe below on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, share the channel, and make sure you're following us on social. We got a special guest coming up today, but if you didn't watch last week's episode with Spencer Dinwiddie, go check up on that. He made some great points about today's game, the culture of the game, the direction the game is going, and teased a potential fit for his game, the Rockets. He's a free agent. That was a great episode. But today's show, man, we got another legendary bucket getter. He just got his jersey retired last week by Michigan. Trey Burke is in the house. One of the guys that I have great admiration for, his game, his approach, and, the things that he did on the basketball court in his 9 seasons in the league. Keep it locked, man. Buckets don't stop. Jackpot City Casino. All right, man, we got Trey Burke in the house. My guy, man. The last time I saw you,
What's up, man?
It was at our Pro-Am in Toronto when you came up. Shout out to the Kingdom League, Tahan Johnson. You came up. It was probably the most stacked Pro-Am game ever played in Canada. A lot of NBA guys. You came in there and just cooked 54 points, walked out of there, made your mark and just left, man. That was dope. So how you been, man?
I've been good. I recently just came out here to Mexico, playing in the Champions League. Yeah. Really trying to build my portfolio back up after the injury. Played in China for a quick second last year, but really just trying to get some more recent film to see where it goes from here. But I've been good, man. Family is good. Everybody doing well, so just taking it a day at a time, really. Just happy to be back on the court.
Yeah, man. And, the whole world saw your jersey get retired last week by Michigan. Congrats on that. I want to start this off there, but how did that feel, because when it comes to college basketball, Trey Burke is a certified legend. Your run there, the moments you had, the games you had, that Michigan squad, how deep they went, March Madness, like every hoop fan from that era remembers that, and you'll forever be remembered for that. But to see your jersey get retired, how did that feel?
Man, that was a real feeling. I didn't know they was going to do it as soon as they did it. Last year, they reached out to me and told me that they were in the talks of, retiring it. There's been some greats that's come before me, such as the Fab Five, so it was exciting for me. It was also shocking for me. But at the same time, I got to always give respect to the ones that come before me or that came before me, such as the Fab Five. So hopefully one day that, they get their jerseys put up in the Raptors as well. But for me and my family, it was a bucket list for me, growing up, just being a kid, watching college basketball, having dreams, aspirations to make it to the league. That was something that was, I'm still taking it all in, honestly. But it was a great night. Great event, and I was just happy to be able to share with my family.
So your kids, right? They weren't born. How old were they when they weren't even born?
Right? They weren't born. No, my son is 11 and my daughter is 7. I had my son going into my sophomore year in the league. So he wasn't around.
They comprehend it all.
Yeah, he's starting to, pick up on, the magnitude of that run and, what I did. But I think last week, him being a part of that and seeing the love that I got, being there, that really, I think it resonated with him. And now he's starting to pick up basketball himself, and wanting to play. So, I'm just happy to be able to leave a legacy, for my kids. And that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. You're still in shape. I know you work. I see you working every day, and still hooping, right? In terms of your game, your ability, your body, how do you feel? Because we know you belong on that NBA level. That's a fact. But how do you personally feel in terms of your game?
I feel great physically. I'm still building back up mentally. When you sit out for a half a year, once I tore my Achilles, that's really like a year-long recovery process. But, anybody that knows me knows I'm a worker. I attack rehab. It took about a month and a half, 2 months for me to really get out of that dark space mentally that I feel like all athletes go through, when they experience a major injury. And that was my first major injury. God blessed me, throughout my years to never have an injury. And that was my first one. So once I got out of that, that space, that dark space, and, made a decision to continue to go forward and keep playing and want to get to that level, that's when that journey, that clock started again for me. Unfortunately, it's still like 8, 9 months where, I had to sit out and build back up.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I played in China. I played well in China, but I still feel like mentally I wasn't where I was before the injury. You can be as physically gifted as you want to be, and everybody knows my skill set and what I'm capable of doing. But I don't think until you mentally are all the way back, confident mentally, you got your rhythm all the way back, you're not going to be able to get to that level again. I feel like I'm finally getting back to that level. I just haven't been able to show it yet. But it's coming. It's coming. Everybody know me. I'm a competitor, and I know where I belong, but at the same time, I'm having fun with it again. That's all that matters.
No, for sure, man. So I want to talk about the league, right? Lottery pick out of Michigan. You go on, and the league kind of went through a shift. Like now you see they're kind of fading your 6-foot guard. They've started to make it really hard for the 6-foot guard to, get on the court, get in the game, stay in the game, because the way the game is set up now, right? You went through a whole shift, and then you come in cooking buckets. Every squad you went to, whether it was the Jazz, the Knicks, people remember you for these runs where, you were a joy to watch because you came in, reminded us of like that 2000s hooper, the street game. You had a lot of craft, a lot, the handles, the shot making, all the goods, right? When you're going through these moments in the league, you're going up against these. That was an elite era of guards, point guards, that you're talking about with the Dame Lillard, Steph Curry's, Kyrie Irving's, every night's a war, Kemba Walker. Talk to me about those moments in the league because you played at the highest level, and we're having 30, 40, game winners. Like I saw a clip we posted a clip like the other month. Jason Tatum and these guys are guarding you. You hitting a game winner over them. So it's been crazy to see the moments and the buckets you've got in the league. What's your mind frame around that run?
And I had mixed emotions. My time in the league, I had fun, man. I had a great time in the league. It was always a dream of mine to play at the highest level, and I still desire to play at the highest level. But I know it's more to just what's going on the court. But to just talk about the court work, I feel like every time I got an opportunity to really play and to really be in a role where I'm getting real minutes and not one game playing 25 minutes, the next game playing 10 minutes,
yeah.
I showcased what I could do. Or, like you said, rather that was the Jazz, my short stint with the Sixers, I showcased that. Then I got traded to Dallas. Showcased it with Carlisle. Before Dallas, I can't forget to mention the Knicks era. It was just, we weren't winning. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think my size, you have to have the perfect fit. You know what I mean? Because, guards are so expendable. There's so many 6-foot guards in the world, that can play. You know what I mean? I think I never really found that perfect home. That home that embraced me for who I was on and off the court.
Right.
And that's why you've seen flashes. You'll see a 40-point night. You'll see a 30 and 12. There's a lot of games that, people don't remember that were super loud. You know what I mean? Early in my career and near the end of my career. And I don't talk about it much. I'm glad you asking me about it. When someone asks me about it, I talk about it, but I never want to come off as the guy that seemed like, oh, he making excuses. But, if you know, you know. You know what I mean? If you are a real basketball fan and not just a casual, like you always say, someone who just tuned in to the marquee players, the guys that they're pushing, and you really know basketball, you know what I mean? That I've, belong still on that level. I decided to make some decisions, for me and my family that I feel like, stayed with me throughout my career. And one of those was the vaccination, you know what I mean? And I always speak on that because I didn't speak on it during that time enough or as much as I wanted to, just because I wanted to protect myself and my family. I didn't want to jeopardize that. Now that I'm away from it, I always talk about, I just feel like it was more to it, than just the court. You know, if you always go back to the film and look at what I was doing on the court, the body of work that I would do on the court
Yeah.
per 30 minutes, per 20, you know, when I actually got the time, I always produced and I always competed at a high level against the best of them. So I always bring that up just because I just feel like from my situation, not talking about anybody else's, it was more than just basketball, you know. I feel like my skill set spoke for itself, you know, when I was out there.
Yeah, so that era with COVID and the vaccine, there was a few players that didn't get the vaccine, right? Kyrie obviously was the one that was vilified, and that was put out there. How was that time? Because I know there's a few guys in the league that chose not to do it. For you being a guy that was, again, we go back to it, like you said, they make the 6-foot guard expendable, right? So now you're making a personal decision. How tough was that? Because I remember you had a great. Bro, you came out of that Dallas situation cooking, right? In the ball. And I'm going to talk about that right after this. But how frustrating was that? Because it's like, I feel like I'm at the top of my game, just proved everything I did, and now this shit happens. I make a personal health decision. Like, how tough was that?
It was super tough. It was real tough. It was days I came home and I cried, like literally cried because, I love this game. Always played to be the best that I could be. And I put a lot of work in this game. And, when that hit, it's crazy now because it's irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's not even talked about. I just happened to be a part of that, era. And I think that's, that just is a part of my greater purpose. And I think I influenced a lot of kids to stand on decisions, that they may not have wanted to stand on at that time. But if it's you and that's who you are and that's what you're about, sometimes it ain't about just going after the money and just doing what you're being told to do. And I think, kudos to anybody that got it. My mom got it. It's people close in my family that got it. But, I'm a very, very spiritual dude. And I pray a lot, you know what I mean? I was just hearing things and I just felt like for me and, my 2 kids looking up to me, my wife, I think it was the right decision for me to stand on what I believed in and not to just conform to what they're telling me to do and to put something in my body that I didn't know what was going in my body. And still to this day, people don't know. So the decision was tough, man. It was days where I contemplated, man, I'm going to just get the Johnson & Johnson. I'm going to just go ahead and get it. Yeah. And I just could never really move myself to actually do it. And, I don't speak bad on the Mavs. I respect the Mavs just because they gave me and my family opportunity of a lifetime. Mark Cuban, all of those guys, shout out to those guys. I just think it was a greater agenda in place. And, once I decided not to get it, I kind of seen the end of the road for me in the NBA that next year. They didn't play me. That year, you remember, we made it to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah. And there was literally no reason for me to not be on that court, helping out Luka, helping out Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, there was literally no reason, you know what I mean? I say that from the bottom of my heart, like, yeah. And I just knew it was deeper than basketball. And once I decided to stand on that, I was coming in the locker room. I had my own locker room the whole year. Yeah. I wasn't with the guys, though, on the road, I was able to kick it with them and things of that nature, but I had my own locker room. I was separate from the team, and it built me up, though. It made me stronger in my walk, in my faith. And like I said, man, it was just deeper than basketball for me. And I'm actually proud of myself that I stood on it because there was times where, like I said, man, I was on the verge of just conforming to do something that I know was going against my will and what I value. So
it sucks because there's guys that in a situation like you that lost their careers, lost their jobs, so much shit went on that time, man. But I want to talk about that run in the bubble. That was probably up there as one of my favorite Trey Burke runs because, watching you closely, I feel like the bubble favored guys like you because it was just all hoop, there's no crack. Yeah, that's it. And it took away the kind of like what you just talked about. It just made it just about who's on the floor. The production was limited, like the in terms of the producing of the NBA, the presentation. So it's just straight, shoes squeaking, guys just getting after it. And I remember you again in that one of my favorite games of yours is that game against the Clippers. You and Luka, right? It was a back and forth game, back and forth series. And you, I think you were wearing the questions, bro, the Reeboks, the AIs, cross the shit out of Kawhi. And I'm like, I told everyone, I'm like, yo, this is one of the best guards in the fucking world. Like right there, right? Talk to me about that bubble run, playing next to that young Luka, right? I think he was first or second year, the level that he was at, the game winner, all that whole run, bro. Talk to me about that squad, because that's your last real run where they gave you opportunity to do.
Yeah, it was. Man, I'm getting goosebumps, listening to you talk about it, because it was like, it was just a dream come true. I honestly, at the time, couldn't believe I was back in that situation. Then I tried my best to grasp it. I feel like I did, you know what I mean? But as we all know, that next year, COVID hit.
Right.
And they were mandating it. But as far as the bubble, like, I couldn't believe that I was back in that situation. I respect Carlisle still to this day, because you don't remember, I was out the league for about 5-6 months before that. Coming from Philly, from the Sixers. I was with the Sixers for a quick second. And then for like 5-6 months, I was out the league. And I remember having the thoughts of, overseas, things of that nature. And I'm just like, man, I'm just deflecting all those thoughts. Like, man, I'm about to go to another level. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go to another level with the way I approach life off the court and the way I approach the game on the court. And I just put one foot in front of another, one day at a time. And I remember Jalen Brunson had messed his shoulder up at the time. I think he had like dislocated his shoulder, and Carlisle called me, was like, "Hey man, JB gonna be out for a minute. We need a guard to come in and fill that role, and we need you to be yourself, and we know what you can do, but are you in shape?" They asking me all these questions. I'm coming off the streets basically again, and I go in and I catch COVID. It's funny, I catch COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to go to Orlando, but I got a quarantine in the hotel in Dallas for like 20 days until I get, I think, 2 or 3 negative tests. And it took me about 20 days to get those negative tests. But I made sure I was responsible. I stayed away from everybody. I locked in. I was locking into a lot of stuff off the court spiritually, making sure I'm hitting the gym and making sure nobody was in there. And once I got to the bubble, I felt ready, bro. I was prepared. And like you said, man, the opportunity was there. And playing with somebody like Luka, it made my job even easier, because I was actually playing in that combo role, which I feel like I'm best in. A lot of coaches in the past sometimes stuck me in that 2 position, and that's not my natural position. They see the qualities that I bring when I get hot and I can score, but I think they tend to forget that I'm a playmaker and that I can get in the paint and draw the defense and then hit the open guy. I can actually play the point guard position. And I think it fit me well, man. It fit me perfectly playing alongside Luka, because when Luka was in the game, I was off the ball, ready to catch a shoot, ready to make plays when he'll find me. But when he would go out the game, I was on the ball. You know what I mean? So, man, it was a great situation for me. I feel like I made the most of it, and I just appreciate those guys for giving me the opportunity.
Head to jackpotcity.ca and catch your bonus today. Play like a champ, win like a champion. Chaos or comp, Jackpot City keeps you in the action. Jackpot City has tons of slot games, massive jackpots, and bonuses that keep the action going while we keep the conversation rolling. Head to jackpotcity.ca, grab your welcome bonus, and play responsibly. Time to play some slots. That Giannis trade could end up being possibly just as big as that Luka trade was, in terms of shock, in terms of, okay, I got $36 right there, in terms of just like a needle mover, something that shakes the league up and gets everyone buzzing, gets everyone wanting to watch the Knicks, watch the Warriors, wherever he ends up. I remember that Luka trade when it happened. It was like 11 p.m. my time here in the West Coast, and immediately made like an emergency podcast episode at that moment, because first of all, it felt fake. Someone called me, they're like, yo, Luka got traded. So the league is in a different place now. You could see a megastar get traded next week. Shit, I mean, imagine someone like LeBron gets traded. There's a lot going on in the business of the NBA with the new CBA. It's different. Teams are preparing 3-4 years ahead. All right, back to the episode, guys. So it's months of preparation, right? Where you go from you're sitting 5-6 months where you're thinking overseas. Then you have a guy like Kawhi Leonard guarding you who's saying, fuck it, I'm going to go at this guy. Like, is that just prep? When we see you getting your game off against that type of defender, is that just you believing in your preparation, or is that just you saying, like, fuck this, I belong here, I have the ability, I just got to show it?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. And I grew up I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. It starts with self-confidence first. Being confident in your skill set regardless of who's in front of you. Yeah. But I mean, I grew up playing against guys, obviously not at first team All NBA Kawhi Leonard level, but guys that grew up just like Kawhi, guys that had that same build, guys that was, just in my neighborhood, just in my city, just playing AAU, going up to Detroit, playing in Chicago, playing just in all these different environments, Philly, you know what I mean? Where you had to be who you say you was, you know what I mean? And I carried that on my shoulder. I feel like I carried that on my shoulder, throughout my time in the league, and specifically during the bubble. That was national and right before the game, I think people forget that KP Porzingis didn't play that game. So that was an extra 20 to 25 points off the table. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in my mind, I knew Luka gonna be Luka. You know what I mean? No, I gotta be, that guy that, that X factor. To give ourselves a chance to win. And that's what I tried my best to do. Like I said, like you said, once Kawhi got in front of me, it was just like, oh, what I'm gonna do? Pass the ball. And you know how I am. I grew up watching Jordan. I grew up watching Iverson. Yeah. When Jordan got in front of Iverson, he passed. You know what I mean? I remember literally he switched on to me, and I was like, oh, this the moment right here.
Right.
And I just got in my bag, bro. And it was a fun time going up against Lou Will. Like, Lou was at the top of his game at the time. And like, I'm trying to figure out how to guard him because he taking one or two dribbles and you put your hand in that jar, he going right into you. It's 2 free throws.
Yep.
In my head, I'm like, I'm taking that. I'm gonna take that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna learn how to do that. Playing against Kawhi, I think Harden was on that team, wasn't he?
No, it was Paul George.
Paul George.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
PG. Same at the time, damn near the same level. You know what I mean? And just playing against that level of talent, I believe that if I got an opportunity and I found a home early in my career, someone who embraced me, going into my second year, they didn't draft another point guard and they actually tried to develop me and gave me the confidence that they love me as who I am and that they rocking with me. I believe I could have had that same career. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, Unfortunately, it didn't work out like that, but I don't think anybody could take away from the player that I am still to this day.
For sure. You saw Jalen Brunson, right? You mentioned him. In those moments, all right, he's another guy who's a hooper. He has that game, right, that we talk about. His dad kind of engraved that in him. But, you saw this guy when he's a young guy trying to make his way in the league. Did you know, obviously, like, you're not going to say I knew he was going to be a fucking star like this.
Yeah.
But did you know that he had this level of ability where he could lead a team, carry a team? Because as you know, it's about opportunity. I feel like that's a guy that just got at the opportunity and capitalized.
Yeah, I think so. Because I seen flashes early on, just being around him, just his maturity on and off the court. It's a lot that comes to being in the league, and you want to get to that level, you have to have a level of maturity, a level of emotional stability to continue to develop and to get to that level. And at the same time, it's tough too because we all fighting for that spot. You know what I mean? Like, we cool But at the same time, it's like in the back of your head, it's like, I got to take it to him. I got to give it to him every day. Or I got to, once the lights turn on, I have to produce more than this person or more than this player because he's in my position. But I definitely saw the qualities. And even coming out of Villanova, what he did at Villanova, it was all, just written in the sand right there. You know what I mean? I could tell that, like, if he just continues to develop like he did, he'll be in the position that he's in today. I'm super proud of him, super happy for him, and it's a great thing to see. That's a guy that I actually shared the court with Luka. We at times we were all three. I remember Carlisle had me, JB, and Luka on the court at times.
Yeah.
And me and JB used to talk about it all the time. Damn, bro, why he not playing us together more? It would kind of be like, if I was coming out, he was coming in for me. If he was coming out, I was coming in for him. But there was times we were on the court together and it would be ugly, you know what I mean, to say the least, just because of our skill sets. So I can honestly say I seen it. Like I said, I'm proud to see what he's doing.
Obviously, you saw Luka when he was like emerging. Could you see that Luka then and say that this guy's going to be a top 3 player in the world?
Yes, not before I got to Dallas because I didn't know him. But once I got to Dallas, Luka has a level of confidence that I haven't seen in too many players. The game is so fast and there's so many possessions, so much that's going on in the game. It's easy to go from the mindset that you start the game with, like, I'm a cook. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do such and such. It's easy to fluctuate from that mindset after 3 or 4 misses. Say you start off 0 for 3, 0 for 4. Say you start off 1 for 5, 1 for 6. His mindset never changes. And you can always learn from someone older than you. You can always learn from someone younger than you. That was something that I always tried to take from Luka, was just his mental maturity, you know what I mean? And I don't know if he learned that just from playing pro at a young age. I believe it had to come from that. Because in America, we didn't have access to that level of talent, and that level of teaching that early. We were all playing AAU and things of that nature. And I think, for him to bring that over to the States and for us to see that, people should take from that and learn from that and learn how to stay. You have to stay stoic throughout a whole game. And I think that's why he's at the level he's at, because he's able to stay mentally stable regardless of what's going on in the game. So, yeah, I think I seen it once I got to Dallas. Before I got to Dallas, like I said, didn't know him. But once I got there, it was like, yeah, this dude the real deal. Yeah, man, I was happy to play with him.
You talk about AAU. I want to get your take on this because you're from an era where there was AAU, but there was still, go hoop outside, play against the older guys, go to open runs, and it was just changing. Now it's just every American kid, every Canadian kid is every weekend in the summer is an AAU. Every single weekend, right, is an AAU tournament. You're traveling. What's your take on that versus in a time period where you might just go hoop with whoever at the park? You might just go hoop in the hood. You're like, there's a different activity that comes from that player,
Yeah, it's unfortunate nowadays just because there's so much, you got the NIL, you got so many people in it for the wrong reasons now. I think back when I was growing up and I was in that time period playing AAU, it was more genuine leaders. There was more genuine coaches. And I'm not saying there's still genuine coaches out there. I'm not talking about those guys, but there's guys now that, their motive and their whole purpose and intent is to, groom a player to get to a point where I can get, and these guys getting NIL deals at 13, 14 years old. We wasn't thinking about money at that age. We was thinking about what's the quickest way we could get ranked? What's the quickest way we could get to varsity, once we reach high school? It was real steps, and that had nothing to do with symbol money. Right. And I think now it's such a different game, man. It's a different ball game now because you have that aspect now, and kids aren't able to get the natural growth and the natural development that I feel like God intended, for this game to have. You know what I mean? The money is involved so early you don't really see the natural development of a kid no more because they're not getting exposed to, like you said, being outside playing curveball, being outside playing smear the queer football, playing on rims with no nets, playing Chicago, playing 21, whatever you call it. That actually built the character, that built the person as along with the athlete. And I think that's missing nowadays because everybody want to go to the gym. Everybody got cameras. We ain't have cameras like that. You know what I mean? All His Life was one of the first ones, where, and they blew up because they were one of the first ones. But now you got a million outlets. Yes. You got dudes getting highlight tapes and they ain't do nothing. You know what I mean? It looked like he had 30, but he might have had 7, 8 points. You know what I mean? Because they making it look so good. All of that is contaminating the game, man. And it's sad to see, but what can I do about it? I can but talk about it. You know what I mean? I try to do my best now. I plan on getting an AAU team very soon. And I want to bring back that old school feel. It's going to be tough, but I think it's going to take athletes like myself that actually went through it, that actually grew up in that era, actually experienced getting out of a van with only 5 players and 3 minutes on the clock before you about to play, and you got to go out and you got to hoop. Man, like all of that I feel like that's what's missing. You know what I mean? Like that's really what we grew up in. And I think, I think kids deserve that, today, but I don't know if they will ever get that again.
Yeah, the purity of the game definitely has taken a hit with all this shit. I want to almost, before we wrap up, talk about the run that I would say that the general public knows you most for. Is you in that New York jersey with the cornrows, like a young AI out there, just cooking, right?
Hey, and they call me that, I think people mistaken that I've called myself that, and they was calling me Trey I and the solution and things of that nature. But go ahead.
That Knicks run, how crazy was that? Because that's the Mecca, MSG. Getting your game off there, and just like every night you were in your bag. It felt like you got the right opportunity and moment for a bit just to show everything. And I think that's the real Trey Burke at the NBA stage. Like a 42-11 game in Charlotte. We talk about the games against this, like anyone was getting the work. Talk to me about that Knicks run and the Knicks fans and how crazy that was.
Oh man, it was a beautiful time period for me. The only thing is we weren't winning. I'm about winning, man. I was getting the recognition that I felt like I finally deserved, but it got spoiled because we just weren't winning and we were tanking. I'm just gonna say I'm just gonna call it what it is. You get to a certain point in the season. I remember I had got caught up that first year with Hornacek, and we were already in game 65, game 70. And they had sack guys, and we were tanking, and that's when I really took off. And then that next year when Fizdale came in, I played really well, but I also just feel like it was agendas in place. At the time, there was guys that was drafted before me, and they wanted to prove that, they were the right pick. All of these things go into, the opportunity and the situation that you feel like you may deserve that may not ever come. You know what I mean? That window of opportunity was very slim for me. And I feel like I made it the most out of it, but there was only so much that was in my control, if that makes sense. And I feel like when I got that chance to really be who people believed I could be coming into the league, I showed it. It was, like I said, it was just unfortunate that it was just on the team that we weren't winning games. And they broke that team up. That's when I ended up getting traded to Dallas. And, the rest was history. But the fan base in New York still love me to this day. Went out to Dykeman, played in Dykeman with Mikey. Yeah. Shout out to Mikey and Dominican Power. And I just embraced the whole community, embraced the whole city. They embraced me too, but I don't think they embraced me as much as they could have because we weren't winning. They're winning now. They in the playoffs now. It'd be a different situation if I was on that team.
Yeah.
But shout out to the Knicks, man. Once a Knick, always a Knick.
Man, that episode was amazing. Hearing from Trey Burke, hearing about the runs that he had with the Mavs and the Knicks, and then the insight into that time during COVID, when it was with the vaccine and things like that. how it can affect a guy's career, you know, and everything that's gone on since. A lot of stuff that we talked about there is deep NBA level stuff, you know, and goes beyond just what you see on the 94 feet, and you know, goes into the politics and the behind the scenes stuff that, you know, really affects everything that you see play out on the court. So there's a lot more to it, right? I wanna speak on Trey personally in terms of his work ethic. Like, I know a lot of guys in the league, how they work, how they prepare. Trey Burke is up there as one of the hardest workers I've ever seen or been around in the game. At that pro level, man, the dude is a workhorse, and he's still going, still running stairs, weight room, shooting every day. His preparation is of an NBA superstar the way you would see it. And it, you know, to see the run that he had, you know, everyone thinks, oh, you got to be a Hall of Famer, or if you don't go out and become, you know, this mega star in the NBA, that you don't have a successful run. Like this dude, to do 9 years in the league as a 6-foot guard, coming out of college, lottery pick. He had a great run, man, and he's a legend in Columbus, Ohio. Subscribe below on YouTube. We got more episodes coming every week, you know, trying to get a new bucket getter every week for you guys. Thumbs up, share, subscribe, like. Buckets don't stop on social. Check us out. Shout out to Jackpot City Casino. We're going to keep these coming at you. Buckets don't stop.